about the cities, now I know many of us here live in town. So I live here just on West Side. So don't feel that, it's an attack on anybody, but it's just an encouragement, amen? Something to pray about and something to consider, because if you pray sincerely and you exercise faith, God will help. So we see this is the life in the cities. High rises, it's all congested. This is called high density. There are so many people in such a small area, high density. Now, some people may say, well, what's wrong with the cities? Why can't we just wait for the Lord and just be, I don't see any issue with that. And I would point to you to Lot. Remember Lot, the story of Lot. It teaches us a lot about why the cities may not be ideal for God's people towards the end. Now, if you go to Genesis 19, verse 1, it says, and they came 2 angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself in his face toward the ground. Now, sitting in the gate means that Lot had become a man of influence in the city, because back then in the old days, when you sit in the gate, it means that people come to you for advice, for some type of judgment, so he was like one of the influential persons in the city, and mind you, he was wealthy too, because remember he had to separate with Abraham because of his wealth. Now, you say, well, Lot did escape. Did Lot escape the city? Did he escape Sodom?
Yeah.
But the question is, what did it cost? At what cost? How many daughters did he escape with?
2.
And sometimes we think those are the only daughters that he had. Lot had other daughters. He had sons-in-laws. Most likely he had grandchildren too. Says, and the man said unto Lot, hast thou here any besides son-in-law and thy sons and thy daughters, on whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place. So the angel is asking, do you have any children out there? And for we will destroy this place because of the cry of them that is waxing great before the face of the Lord. And the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. So we see here that Lot went out and spake unto who? His sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. Did they listen to him?
No.
But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. So, in the end, how many people of his family did he escape with? Only 2. His wife and all his other children were lost. Only 2 escaped. Do you see the cost that it was to Lot? Do you see what did it cost? What about Abraham? Did Abraham lose anybody when Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed?
No.
Even his wife turned into a pillar of salt. This was the influence of the city on Lot's family. And if you read further in the Bible, you'll find out that his daughters, not only because of the influence of the cities, they got their father drunk, and they committed incest with him. That's how we got the Moabites. Where do you think they learned all of that? It was in the city. Listen to what Jesus says. Likewise, also it was as it was in the days of Lot. They did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. So the last days are going to be like as it was in the days of Lot. That's why we pay attention to that story. Can you press play there? Yeah, can you stick the sound thing? I think I forgot to put the sound. Just press enter, it should play.
Agenda 21 is kind of a code name for a master plan originated at the United Nations to change the political and economic system of the world to one of total collectivism. And in order to do that, people must not be allowed to have independence. They must be dependent on the state for everything. Otherwise, they won't be easily controlled by the state. That means they can't have private property, mostly. They cannot have land of their own. They have to live in, preferably in high-rise apartments that are provided to them by the state as a benefit, so to speak. Oh, good, we got a free apartment. But they want, these people at the top want all humans to be dependent on the largesse of the state. That means that they don't want anybody living out in the boonies. Anybody that's got a couple of acres of land and his own water supply and can grow his own food and that kind of thing, or have some sheep or some chickens, these people are a threat to the collectivist society. Because they aren't going to go to the politicians and say, please feed me, please clothe me, please give me shelter. They tend to be independent. That's the secret behind Agenda 21. They want people out of the country. They want corporations out there growing all the food and that kind of thing, but they don't want anybody living out there, because that way they cannot be controlled. In order to control mankind, we have to get them all into the big cities. We have to rack them up and stack them up, get them dependent on the state for their food, their shelter, their electrical power, their water, everything. That's the dirty secret behind Agenda 21.
Now, this is why governments, you see, if Satan knows that people will be able to get out of the cities and be able to have this independence. But that's why they came up with the Agenda 21. Look it up when you get a chance. But when we had coronavirus lockdown, this is what, in South Africa, this is what was happening. People were fleeing from the cities, and they were, in order to get their freedom, so they had to flee the cities and go out in the country, out in the rural areas, and the government was pleading for people not to flee the cities. Amen? So the children of the world, have they become wiser than the children of God? Now that gentleman there, I don't even think he's an Adventist, Seventh-day Adventist. He's just one of the thinking men. He's observing. He might not even know our message. Yes, so finally here is, get out of the cities as soon as possible and purchase a piece of land where you can have a garden, where your children can watch the flowers growing and learn from the lessons of simplicity and purity. Just like Noah, who by obedience served his entire family. Amen.